Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. You're watching Alaska weather on this December the 4th. Thanks for joining us tonight. And as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that very easily by calling us at the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. That's a free call here in Alaska, paid for by the National Weather Service, paid for by you. And that will have your up-to-date local information there. Write down the numbers as you're dialing into that, and next time it'll go a little bit faster. You can always find us online at weather.gov/Alaska or on social media, Facebook and Twitter, of course. And if you can't find what you're looking for, let me know. david.snyder@noaa.gov is how you find me. Weather's changing across northern parts of southeast tonight. A winter storm warning has been issued for the Haines and Skagway areas. In general, you're looking for about 4 to 8 inches of snow. And as we look up the hill a little bit there, we're looking for Skagway to start out around 6 to 8 inches of snow, and up toward White Pass a little bit less, about 4 to 6 there. Around the Haines area, we're expecting 6 to 10 inches of snow. A little bit less as you head up toward the border there, probably about 3 to 5. That'll go from tonight and into tomorrow there. So a winter storm warning for the Haines and Skagway areas and both of the highways going out of town. A winter weather advisory is posted for Yakutat, and it looks like the heaviest snow will probably be on the eastern side of the bay and then down the coastline there. In general, around Yakutat, probably about 4 to 6 inches of snow. Most of that's going to start to pick up overnight, so about 3 o'clock in the morning is when that advisory actually starts, and then all the way through the afternoon tomorrow for the accumulating snow around Yakutat. So as far as Yakutat goes, not a heavy snow for you, of course. 4 to 6 inches is something to probably sneeze at, but still may make travel a little bit tricky at times. So do be careful. 4 to 6 inches are expected around the Yakutat area. And then out towards southwest, winter weather advisory is posted for the Kuskokwim Delta and areas generally north of Dillingham, around the Bristol Bay region. So not this entire region all the way out toward Lake Iliamna, but generally from Dillingham and along the coast northward into the Kuskokwim Delta. Really the main issue isn't going to be falling snow as much as a broad easterly flow. It's going to be pretty gusty at times, maybe up to about 50 miles per hour. Because of that, it's probably going to drop visibility below a half mile at times. And just in general, be fairly gusty and kind of blustery day out there with snow blowing around. We are expecting to see at least a little bit of new snow, maybe 1 to 6 inches there, especially along some of the western capes there, generally north of Dillingham once again. As you get into the Kuskokwim Delta, probably more like 2 to 6 inches of snow in the region, but again, the wind is really going to be a factor. They're gusting out of the east, perhaps as strong as 50 miles per hour, sustained winds 25 to about maybe 35 miles per hour in general. That's not all. There's more going on up across the North Slope. Blizzard conditions today across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, at least until about 9 o'clock tonight. It looks like that will continue, and especially from Kaktovik to Demarcation Point. West of that, and this includes Prudhoe Bay, a winter weather advisory is in effect. That means poor visibility at times, but maybe not as bad as what you're seeing there with a ground blizzard across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. So all of this, again, should improve a little bit later in the late evening and overnight hours there for the North Slope communities there from Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse east toward Kaktovik and the Canadian border. All right, so we got a lot of wind out there, but we also know it's been cold in the interior. Temperatures around Fort Yukon today and tonight, probably looking at 20 to 30 below. And what is that doing for ice thickness? Well, from Birch Lake to Salter River, we can see that this year's ice thickness is running pretty close to a foot. If you compare that to last year, not too dissimilar, maybe within an inch or so there. So really kind of right on track there with where things were this time last year. A few places like the Twin Bears Camp has a little more ice. Smith Lake has about another inch, and Olney Pond has about another 3 inches of snow, of ice. Birch Lake, though, down about 2 inches there. So if you're keeping track, measure carefully and then enjoy your fishing when you think you have enough of that safe ice out there. And make sure you check with local conditions and other people there before you go. Be safe. Here's a look at the satellite picture across the region. One thing that's really going to change as we head into the rest of the week and into early parts of the weekend is all this mess out here. This is a very unsettled pattern, and we have several waves of strong low pressure across the southern Bering and the western Bering. And then we have these remnant lows still sitting across the northern Gulf. So one low here across the outer coast of southeast still sloshing in enough moisture and snow into the northern parts of the Panhandle to get snow going tonight in earnest. So a winter storm warning there. We still have a low hovering out here across the northern Gulf there. You can see it kind of shearing apart a little bit more. This guy, though, is really going to zoom into northern parts of southeast and enhance that snowfall even more tonight. Another wave of low pressure and yet another even further west, all going to work together to really bring that snow into south and western Alaska tonight. And then in general, going into the weekend, it looks like a very broad area of southerly winds moves into the western Gulf, and temperatures look like they're going to warm up. But there's one problem with this. The models that we use to at least give us some guidance on how the weather is going to play out, about 50% of them don't agree on what's happening at all, especially as it applies to what's going on across the central and eastern Aleutians. So what does that mean for you? It means there could be some huge changes in what you see as your forecast in the next day or so if these models, which are usually pretty close together, kind of get their act together and all agree on one solution or the other. So it could be completely different because there's a powerful storm here some of these models are not picking up on, or maybe they're right and there's no storm there at all. It is a little bit of a head scratcher, not going to lie. Here's a look at what's going on with our weather today. High pressure and cold stuff here across the interior. Out across the west near the Pribilofs, a 995 millibar low. This moves eastward tonight, starts to snow up across southwestern Alaska. You still have low pressure here in the Gulf. This starts to snow in northern parts of southeast and starts snow showers across the Copper River Valley and parts of Prince William Sound. Flurries and fog across the middle and upper AKwx Valley. Areas across the Beaufort, looking at some fog and flurries there. Wind across the Aleutians and wind across southwestern Alaska. As we get into Thursday, snow continues in southwest. We start to see snow showers trying to work their way into the Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet. Not far enough north for that to affect Anchorage or the Susitna Valley just yet. Watching for snow to continue across northern parts of southeast. Notice the tight pressure gradient here across the central and eastern chain. Winds coming up across the Bering as well. And then as we get into Friday, here's where we start getting into that broad southerly flow for the northern Gulf. We get rid of the snow across northern parts of southeast, but we're still looking at some cold drainage wind possibilities there. And then all across the south and west and the interior of southwest, we're looking at wind, rain changing to snow, and rainy conditions across Bristol Bay, and then returning to snow back behind that. All the while, cold is entrenched across the interior, especially the eastern interior. That's not going to budge. So what does that mean for your temperatures? As we get into tonight, looking at temps in the lower 30s for the most part in southeast, except for Haines and Skagway, colder there in the 20s. Teens and 20s for Prince William Sound, single digits for the Kenai Peninsula, including Anchorage down to Kenai. Homer looking at about 14, 25 in Kodiak. The interior, Fairbanks, if you clear out tonight, it is going to be cold stuff. So banking on that, about 10 to 15, maybe even 20 below in some areas around Fairbanks, 25 below for Eagle. For Yukon, that's probably not cold enough. Go 30 below or more. Temperatures on the North Slope, 5 to 15 below. Nome, 3 below. Southwest in the teens. The Alaska Peninsula out toward Dutch Harbor, 30s and 40s there. High temperatures tomorrow don't budge in the interior. Teens for south central, southwest in the 30s and 40s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And on to aviation weather now. IFR concerns will start out across the south and west, all the way across the windward side of the Aleutians as well, Pacific coastline there, and starting to creep in toward King Cove Falls Pass and areas into Cold Bay, all the way up into Lake Iliamna and around Aguagig, parts of the southwestern coast and the Capes. Certainly looking at increasing areas of poor visibility and lowered ceilings as snow develops probably during the morning hours and into the afternoon across southwest. Across the higher terrain of southeast, we're going to see at least marginal conditions there, and watch for changes here across Chilkoot and White Pass, generally north of Juneau, as snow begins to set in throughout the day. Also looking for marginal conditions across the northern Gulf, kind of limited there generally east of Prince William Sound, and all across the North Slope with IFR mainly from Kaktovik eastward to Demarcation Point. Thursday afternoon, we're going to see widespread marginal conditions across the north, but we will see a little bit of improvement there just north of the Brooks Range summits, all the way down the west coast. Norton Sound and Kotzebue Sound, most of the way look okay until you get to the outer edges there. Most of southwest will still hover at least under marginal conditions. Don't be surprised to see increasing areas of IFR, though, again, as snow starts to push in. Across Cordova to Valdez, IFR should set in around the Barren Islands in the outer areas of Kodiak Island, mainly the Gulf side, looking for IFR, and marginal conditions at least across northern parts of southeast. I won't be surprised to see this push into IFR as we go throughout the day. For Friday morning, again, IFR starts to set in across Bristol Bay, King Cove, False Pass, Cold Bay, all the usual spots to Sand Point, and into Sitkinak and across the eastern side of Kodiak Island. Prince William Sound looking at IFR conditions there, as well as areas up toward McCarthy, and then hit and miss through the Copper River Valley. Susitna Valley also looking at IFR. Marginal conditions across the northern half of southeast, probably looking at least some isolated IFR. And then a little bit of improvement as we get into Friday afternoon, but more widespread IFR across the Gulf, through the Barrens, into Cook Inlet, up through the Susitna Valley and the western Alaska Range passes, all the way out toward St. Matthew, Nunivak Island, and all the way down toward the eastern Aleutians, with IFR returning across parts of the Chukchi Coast. Marginal conditions will be widespread across the North Slope, and look for widespread VFR across a large part of the interior, all the way from Nome to Fairbanks, east toward Eagle, and south toward Northway and Delta at least. Here's your pass conditions now. It looks like Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass will hold at VFR as we go through your Thursday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass are going to push over toward marginal conditions as we go throughout your day. Rainy Pass, though, looks to be okay. Windy Pass should be fine. Isabel Pass, A-okay. And Mentasta Pass calling VFR for your Thursday. Tonita Pass, it looks like will hold at VFR at least for another day. Portage Pass, though, leans over toward marginal conditions in the afternoon. And like I was saying, I think Chilkoot and White Pass are probably going to push over toward IFR as we get into the afternoon. It does look like snow is going to develop there, and at this point, winter storm watches are posted for some parts of northern sections of southeast. Freezing levels, looks like we're going to be dealing with a little bit of warming taking place across the southern parts of the Bering. The surface freezing line is lifting northward, north of St. Matthew, but still holding south of Kodiak Island and outside of Hitchinbrook Entrance, all the way into parts of southeast there. You can see cold weather is still holding with levels there at or below 2,000 feet. Icing potential is a little bit on the lower side for southeast. You can see levels there at least are below 4,000 feet. Still looking at isolated moderate here for the eastern half of the Gulf. Once you get west of the Kenai, including Anchorage and Kenai and Homer, all the way down toward Kodiak Island, the levels are above 2,000 feet. And again, it's fairly isolated for moderate icing potential there. And then out across the west, it goes even higher, above 5,000 to 7,000 feet, south of St. Paul and St. George. As we look at the jet stream, we've got low pressure here out across the central Pacific and in the north. A little bit more of a westerly flow for the Pacific Northwest and a west to northwesterly flow. It's still generally light, 50 to 65 knots across south central and southwestern Alaska, meeting up with a ridge that's pushing into the southern Bering right now. We also have high pressure across the Arctic, northerly flow because of that. And then out across the west, the powerhouse that is that Pacific cyclone is pushing in much stronger winds and will start to warm things up here across the western Bering, 50 to 150 knots there coming into the western Bering. Below that, then, low pressure here across the Norton Sound region. Stronger south and westerly winds developing to the west of that, a westerly push coming over the Gulf of Alaska. Light winds across the interior, 15 to 20, and a northeast wind across the North Slope. At 3,000 feet, winds are a little bit stronger here. Offshore flow 25 to 50 knots. Low pressure sitting over Macoriac and Nunivak Island with winds around there 20 to 30 knots. And the Aleutian Chain seeing some increasing winds there, 35 to 40. Southerlies across south central, 10 to 15. Watch for considerable moderate to be widespread across the Alaska Peninsula and the chain, with a chance for isolated severe across eastern Dutch Harbor.
Dual polarization technology is a major upgrade to the current radar system. It allows forecasters a better idea of what's actually out there and can help keep you safe.
Current radar technology transmits and receives information in the horizontal direction, which is very limited. Dual polarization technology, in addition to the horizontal, transmits and receives vertical energy, which allows forecasters to get information about the size, shape, and phase of the precipitation. We can use that information to better determine the precipitation type to expect at your given location.
There you have it. This new technology is currently being installed in radars across the country and is already being used by National Weather Service forecasters to produce better, more accurate forecasts. Learn more here and follow us. Want to know about the future of weather radar? Well, the National Severe Storms Lab has it here with its new phased array radar. Let's check it out.
It's a non-moving radar. It has 4 faces of the antenna, each pointing in different directions. One of the big advantages is that we're seeing so far. It can sample the area around the radar in less than a minute, maybe even a half a minute. And this is 5-6 times faster than what they can do today.
NSSL is leading the development of future weather radar with this project. Learn more here and follow us. The Storm Prediction Center is one of the NOAA weather partners. They are located in the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. Greg Carbon gives us a glimpse into what the SPC does.
Our mission is to analyze and forecast severe thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds from those thunderstorms across the lower 48 states, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. One of the primary missions of the Storm Prediction Center is the issuance of severe thunderstorm and tornado watches across the country when conditions appear to be coming together to support the development of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes.
The world-class meteorologists in the Storm Prediction Center specialize in severe weather and keeping you safe. Learn more here and follow us.
The National Severe Storms Lab is working on increasing the lead time for severe weather warnings. The national average for tornado warnings is currently 13 minutes, but more notice would be helpful, especially for those in charge of moving large groups to shelter. Warn on Forecast will help forecasters issue hazardous weather warnings earlier. The project will give them more info about the chances of strong winds, large hail, and even tornadoes.
Currently, warnings are created by forecasters looking at the atmosphere outside, understanding its volatility, and then comparing that to how they see the Doppler radar presenting what's going on inside the thunderstorms. Warn on Forecast is an idea where we're going to take the massive amounts of satellite, radar, and surface data and stick them all into a very high resolution prediction model. And then by producing new forecasts every 15 or 20 minutes, the forecasters hopefully will be able to use that model to produce warnings that extend out to an hour.
Before the National Weather Service can use this tool, it must be developed and tested. One big challenge will be deciding how to get the model predictions to the forecasters.
I'm going to keep this one very low. I'm just adjusting the track.
These hazardous weather prediction models are going to produce a huge amount of output. And this fire hose of data is just too much for forecasters to handle in real time quickly. So in order to help deal with that, NSSL has developed a related project called Facets. And Facets is the methodology which will enable forecasters to focus very quickly on the most important threats.
Once Warn on Forecast and Facets are proven to be reliable and effective, then forecasters will be better able to inform you of threats nearby. Learn more here and follow us.
The Hazardous Weather Test Bed is located at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. It is used for experiments that will allow forecasters to learn and apply new technologies.
The Hazardous Weather Test Bed is a really unique space throughout all of NOAA. And this is where the researchers and the operational folks come together in a common space to solve operational problems and to test new research tools that the research community is working on. The goal is to accelerate the transfer from research to operations of the newest tools and techniques.
People come from around the world to collaborate on this unique project.
We can bring together not only NOAA people, but also university people, faculty, researchers, private sector meteorologists, folks working in other countries in meteorology, forecasters can all come together and focus on what the problem of the day is with the forecasters.
Each spring, several experiments occur in the Hazardous Weather Test Bed. Learn more here and follow us.
What are you looking at? And what are you ignoring? Did you notice the NOAA logo in the corner? Forecasters have a lot of information in front of them too. Every second counts during severe weather, and decisions about where to focus are constantly being made. This could be even more challenging in the future. Phased array radar will produce 4 to 6 times more information than what we have now, which brings us to the question researchers are hoping to answer. Will more radar information affect forecasters' decisions?
From our past experiments, we've learned a lot about how forecasters think during the warning decision process, but we've also learned that those thought processes are very complex, and for that reason, we need a better way to be able to track forecasters' cognitive activity.
Inbounds and possibly golf ball sized hail.
An eye tracker is a piece of technology that is used to determine in real time where someone's eye gaze is located. And these eye trackers are typically video-based, which means a camera sits below a computer monitor, and with infrared light and vector analysis, we can determine where a person is looking and how their eyes are moving.
Eye tracking is already being used in the medical field and air traffic control. Using similar research methods, NSSL is discovering the benefit for weather forecasting too. Phased array radar will give forecasters a lot more to think about. Understanding their decision-making process will help researchers develop even more user-friendly tools. So what's the benefit for you? Even better weather warnings. To learn more, check us out online and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And back with your marine weather now. No big changes across the North Slope, but we continue to see some new growth across the Chukchi Coast, Kotzebue Sound, and Norton Sound. A lot of this is pushing out. We have new growth here across Southwest and a little bit of tiny ice here around the Chignik Bay area. Don't get your hopes up, though, for areas in Southwest. Right now, it looks like a strong southerly flow is going to develop toward the end of the week, so a lot of this ice here is probably in danger and not super solid just yet. But I encourage you to check out the latest ice information, weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. Of course, that is the Alaska Sea Ice Program information there. Here's a look at southeast. You're going to have some variable winds across the inside passage there on Thursday. Winds going north into the Lynn Canal, helping to produce more snowfall there. Watch for visibilities to come down tonight and tomorrow. 15 knots there and 3-foot seas. Northerlies in the Clarence Strait with 2-foot seas there, and southerly winds up the coast, strengthening as you get up toward Cross Sound and north of Sitka. 25 knots with 10-foot seas expected. That should diminish and improve on Friday with kind of a variable flow developing here outside of Cross Sound and in the northeastern Gulf, southeasterlies, I should say, out around Icy Cape and Cape Fairweather. 15 knots and 6-foot seas. And winds go northerly in the Lynn Canal by Friday. 15 knots and 3-foot seas there, and 10 to 15 knots south of Juneau into Clarence Strait with about 2 to 3-foot seas. Across South Central, light winds inside of Prince William Sound, 10 knots and 2-foot seas there. Northeasterly winds picking up as you head south of Kenai and Clam Gulch. You're looking at 25 knots and 6-foot seas there west of the Barrens. Light winds outside in the western Gulf as well. For Friday, winds pick up a little bit more to 30 knots. Look for seas around 9 to 10 feet. And then an easterly wind picks up 25 to 30 with 7 to 8-foot seas there. Northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound, 20 knots and 3-foot seas for you. For Thursday in Southwest, we're looking at easterlies into Bristol Bay with a 6-foot sea on 20 knots. Southeasterlies down the coast with 12-foot seas. Southwesterlies coming up the other side, 25 knots with 7 to 12-foot seas there. Northeasterlies inside of Shelikof Strait with a 4-foot sea and 20 knots there. Southwesterlies on the other side. Quite a mess with a series of fronts and low pressure systems moving through. By Friday, a little bit more of that southerly flow starts to organize. We get into southeasterlies for Bristol Bay, a 7-foot sea there, 25 knots down the coast, and south winds from Kodiak all the way down to Akiak and out towards Sand Point, 30 knots with 16 to 17-foot seas they're building in on Friday. For the Aleutians, the strongest winds will be on the Pacific side, 30 to 35 knots, and 17 to 19-foot seas, 25 knots elsewhere, with seas ranging from about 7 to 12 feet across the central and eastern Bering Sea coast to 15 to 17 feet out west. As we get into Friday, you can see that next wave building in already. A stronger gale, 35 to 40 knots, 21 to 22-foot seas in the west, and westerly winds, say for areas just north of Unalaska, 25 to 35 knots, anywhere from 15 to 18-foot seas on the Pacific side there. All those winds mostly coming in from the west with the exception of right here around Nikolsky and Unalaska. For the west coast on Thursday, north and easterly winds blowing off the shore and over the ice in some cases. A westerly flow coming into the Kuskokwim Delta, but easterlies for St. Paul and St. George. Southerlies for St. Matthew on a 15-knot wind. And 10 to 13-foot seas there as you head north from Etolan Strait and Nunivak Island towards St. Lawrence Island and the south side there. For Friday, winds strengthen, blowing into a strengthening area of low pressure out in the west. A broad easterly flow here picking up to 35 to 40 knots, 10 to 20-foot seas expected, with westerlies over St. Paul and St. George, easterlies for the Kuskokwim Delta, and mostly an offshore flow north of Nunivak Island into Norton Sound again, with ice in Norton Sound and building in the Kuskokwim Delta. Again, hopefully that sticks around. As we get into Thursday, in the north, a light north wind coming into Utqiagvik and the Beaufort Sea coast, mostly a westerly flow, 10 to 15. Northeasterlies working through the Chukchi, 10 to 20. And again, once you get into the Bering Strait area, you're looking at an easterly flow off of the Seward Peninsula, 30 knots with a 13-foot sea. That becomes 35 knots on Friday with a 14-foot sea. So watching out for St. Lawrence Island there. Again, heavy freezing spray probably going to be an issue going into the weekend. Northeasterlies to the Chukchi coast, 20 to 25. And light and almost variable winds here across the Beaufort. So a big improvement perhaps compared to what you're looking at right now, especially around Kaktovik. Tonight, it's going to be cold across the interior. Temperatures anywhere from about 10 below to 30 below around the Fort Yukon area especially. That's where the cold stuff is tonight. South of that, if you get into clouds, you're going to be okay and a lot warmer. But if you lose those clouds, temperatures are going to drop like a rock. Out across the northern parts of southeast, especially Haines and Skagway, a winter storm warning is posted for you. 4 to 8 inches of snow tonight and into tomorrow. Out west, winter weather advisories as snow moves in across the western coast. And a blizzard warning continues for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tonight. That should improve by tomorrow. And we'll be watching for a warm-up across the south.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.